Welcome! Are we humans capable of thinking and acting in ways that create a collective well-being for all of life on Earth? We talk and we argue about ideas for accomplishing this, but can we actually cooperate enough to put our ideas and our actions together to do it? The two big questions that I want to look at in this video are we able to create communities and individual lives that respect all lives on this planet? And then if so, are we willing to do what it takes to make this ability into a reality? I'm Dr. Lynette Wiest, and this video is about inspiration and how to reach our potentials both as individuals and as a global community. I'll discuss 17 areas where we can responsibly learn about, understand, and act in alignment with our part of a global collective community. These areas will build on each other as I explain them, and we'll see how we only reach our potentials, our best experiences, and our best lives to the degree that we understand the importance of our life and of every life, and that we understand the problems and the opportunities that are right in front of us. If you want to see previous and future videos that are on this channel, please subscribe to the channel. The channel includes inspirational videos about relationship dynamics, communication skills, expanded understandings of human systems, nature systems, and more. Now, before I dive in, I want to explain the concepts of and the difference between aptitude and achievement. Aptitude is the potential to learn and accomplish. Achievement is the actual learning and accomplishing. We have the aptitude, the intelligence to create the operating systems that are necessary for our collective well-being. We also have the aptitude, the ability to prioritize the collective well-being over selfish gain, meaning to work cooperatively with others. But these abilities are only activated and actualized or achieved when we first understand that each of us, each life is significant within the collective of all lives. So it's in the best interest of our own life to act in alignment in accordance with what is within the collective well-being. And this seems obvious, I know, but when we process information through misunderstandings and limited perceptions, we seem to think that a collective well-being is a faraway place that we can't get to. Sometimes we use the idea of heaven against ourselves, thinking that our collective well-being is a faraway place in a faraway time and space. And so we think that there's no reason to try achieving heaven on earth. But we have the aptitude, so why not try? Why not try to have the achievement? Here on Earth, it's in our best interest to responsibly learn, understand, and create lives that recognize and act in reverence to all lives. To the degree that we live in any other way, we will behave according to what we think we must do to only survive, rather than behaving according to a world where everyone can thrive within the collective well-being. So how do we achieve this? Well, here are 17 areas of our lives that we can pay attention to and act on. And I do include a personal example too. So first, realize that we understand and experience life through our senses, through touching and seeing and hearing and tasting and smelling. We filter and then process incoming stimuli according to conscious and subconscious memory and prior learning. There's a filter on our senses that decides what to pay attention to and how to process the information. Our filter is aligned with what we believe the purposes of life are. How we filter incoming stimuli determines how we perceive, interpret, and judge the world. In this way, we create belief systems that determine whether our achievements can rise to our aptitude or not. For example, depending on a person's filter, one person will be upset or fearful or frozen by a situation, whereas another person will see the exact same situation as an opportunity to create something greater, to create something better. Use a mind of love to understand and know about our world. Let go of the paradigm that says, I can see the whole context. There is always a more comprehensive way to understand each of our experiences. Secondly, we must stop clinging to thoughts and beliefs that pit us against each other. Ignorance and perceptual limits blind us from our aptitude, our ability for cooperation and collective well-being, and thus blind us from our achievement of it. Where we have difficulty loving others is where we have blind spots. And we must look and find ways to resolve these blind spots. Intelligence looks for ways to create healthy connections, and it discerns the difference between emotional reactions and intelligent responses. I'm not saying to connect with destruction or destructive actions. I'm saying the opposite. Connecting with others does not mean connecting with or loving everything about the other person or loving everything that they do. Focus on yourself. You're the one that you can control. Don't destroy connections. You want to build healthy connections and not toxic ones. Look for the place to build the connection with the other person or the other life. Create connections that respect every life that you touch. Third, our perceptions, our beliefs, and our emotions create our actions. If we perceive ourselves to be against others or to be isolated or divisive, then we block the achievement of our aptitude for collective well-being. But if we see ourselves as interdependent and seek solutions that encompass the needs of everyone, we expand our ability to achieve what we are capable of, our aptitude for collective well-being. Number 4, each of us can change the connections in our brain by tracking the incoming stimuli differently. We do what we need to do to change our brain to track the incoming stimuli differently. You can shift the wiring in your brain, the pathways in your brain, to broaden your understanding of cause and effect and of interpretation. And there are several videos on this channel about how to broaden your perception and what that even means. But for now, remember that depending on a person's perception, one person will be upset and fearful and frozen by a situation, and the other person can see the exact same situation as an opportunity. You can look for the potential and purpose in any given moment rather than being frozen in a moment or frozen in an emotion or frozen in a state of judgment. Fifth, our brains hold the thoughts and perceptions that we have learned and practiced over time. So if we're not paying attention, we can get stuck in limited thought patterns, which become reactive to the environment. On the other hand, when we continue to learn and grow, we tap into more of our aptitude, and we make wiser and more responsible choices for responding to the environment, rather than reacting as if the environment is to blame for our experience. 6, the more comprehensive our awareness is, the more we realize that there is more to factor into the situation than we can ever really mentally understand. Interpret incoming stimuli. Hold it with the understanding that everything has more purpose and meaning than you understand in the present moment. In this way, your brain's endorphins, when you do this, your brain's neurotransmitters, they release endorphins. So you have more endorphins. And that's rather than the cortisol that comes when an event is perceived with anxiety and fear. Perceiving an event with anxiety or fear creates more toxic chemical, which then determines more about how you see. So it's a feedback loop. Number 7, when your brain understands and perceives the world with love, healthy emotional chemicals increase, and you are then practicing a self-reinforcing feedback loop over and over. And that feedback loop becomes more automatic across situations and across events. Be aware that an opposite self-reinforcing feedback loop is also possible. So if you see situations as existing only within your purview, when your purview is that there's no purpose or meaning for something stressful, then you're reinforcing a stressful cortisol-producing chemical pathway in your brain, and you're making those chemicals more durable. You're making that pathway more durable. Eventually, the chemical pathway that you choose becomes the default pathway in your brain. So be careful. If you're reinforcing a toxic pathway, you will likely develop an addiction to stressful chemicals and to stressful emotions. Number 8, understand that the world is constantly evolving in alignment with the collective well-being of all life, with or without humans. We humans decide to what degree we are willing to learn and accept our roles in the perfect balance of interdependence. We must understand that the interdependence of all life, and that of all life and of all the resources that we see, they are all perfectly balanced in a web that we can't change. We can embrace our roles and thrive, or we can refuse to embrace our roles, and that will be to our demise. Each life is provisional to all lives, and it's perfectly balanced within this collective well-being and within all the resources. This is the unity and harmony of heaven on earth. Being aware of interdependence, and trusting ideas that are made from love creates new solutions and a greater sense of internal peace and of internal power. For ever increasing awareness, understand that harmony is playing out even though your brain can't see all the notes to this global song. This is how the world works. We are alive because of our interdependence. Each life impacts all others. We choose whether to get stuck in ignorant beliefs that do not serve all lives, or whether to cling to the peace that we can have when we are conscious of our interdependence that holds our health and our aptitude. Number 9, our physical bodies are a part of nature, and they show us the perfect balance of nature. When we have pain, it is our body's way of alerting us to address an issue. We then have a choice. We can attend to the issue in a healthy way, leading us into increased health, and often a health that we had before we had the pain, or we can ignore the pain at our own peril and potentially increase the pain. We can see painful issues and events from a limited perception, ignoring the fact that healthy solutions will always increase the collective well-being, thereby improving our own well-being. Or we can use a more comprehensive perception and know that the discomfort is leading us into choices for learning about and growing into our collective greater well-being. A true solution for anyone is never destructive for anyone else. Number 10. We are a very small part of a very large system, an infinite system. Each of us has the potential to affect other lives more powerfully than we can ever understand. Whether we are noticing it or not, everything has a bigger purpose than what our human brains can comprehend. We really don't even understand who we are. We're always asking, why are we here? This question assumes, this why are we here question, it assumes a cause and effect paradigm. But it's best to let go of the limited idea that the cause and effect paradigm is comprehensive. The cause and effect paradigm is fine for understanding and using that idea, but remember that there is always more happening beyond your linear awareness of cause and effect. The cause and effect paradigm is a tool that can be very useful, but don't use it to create a perceptual limit. Number 11. When you let love control you and have reverence for all life, you will feel the freedom and the peace that come from surrendering the limited idea that you know the reasons behind and ahead of what is happening. Now, I want to take a minute or two to share an experience that I had last year, in which I had an opportunity to see a challenging situation with either a micro perspective or to look for a greater purpose for the situation. I went to get an item repaired, and it was a critical item that I was using to keep connected with other people during the pandemic. The process of what I expected to be a one-time appointment for a simple repair evolved into several trips and several appointments. After the first fix, or the first trip, a larger malfunction arose, and then in the fixing of that, cascading issues arose with the item. The repair personnel were baffled and they were frustrated at first, as they said they hadn't seen a problem like this before. But over time, they became increasingly patient. And I do want to mention that I was not charged extra for any of these new issues. So the other thing that happened was, on top of all of the issues with the device, some of the necessary repair people were ill, and so they weren't available. I was intrigued and curious about the greater purpose of this ongoing saga that seemed to last forever. Although it was all very inconvenient and caused significant limitations in my use of the critical device, both for personal and for work tasks, I was curious, and I wondered about the connections I was having with the people at the shop and about the peacefulness in the shop, in the space there. I wondered if this sense of peace was coming from me and them, or if it was coming from something else, or if it was coming from all the factors that were involved. And mostly, I wondered what the greater purpose for all of this was. The more that I was open to the possibilities, the more I learned and practiced a greater patience in both myself and with the repair people. And my sense of well-being, it evolved, and it helped me to see that I was a part of some greater purpose that was growing. As the series of events unfolded, I I really realized more and more that there was a purpose much greater than just repairing this device. Each time I was there waiting, I felt more and more at peace with the time that was being used. And although I had no idea what the bigger purpose was, I was literally enjoying the inner peaceful experience. And I was so glad to be a part of something beyond my ability to comprehend. It was clear to me, it was so clear, that the purpose was greater than just fixing my device. And it was greater than anything that I was aware of or that I knew. Also, I was so very glad not to be caught up in a limited perspective that would have led to frustration and confusion and maybe even to blame and division and anger. Number 12, have you ever had a moment when you felt down and someone else's love brought light into your dark moment? Love is our stability, and darkness is not sustainable. Love gives us the strength to see in the dark and bring light into the dark. So bring light into your moments, into every moment, no matter what. Imagine this. Think about walking on a dark path. To light the path, you have a lamp. Your life is the path. Your perception is the lamp. The dimmer the lamp's light, the less comprehensive your understanding of the path will be. And if you fuel your lamp, your perception, with fear, opposition, blame, or greed, your lamp will be dim and your path will be so difficult to see. You'll be more easily misled into more blame and more fear and more division. But if you believe your best fuel is love, your lamp, your perception will be clear and your life will have more light. You'll be able to see the other paths around you and you'll be able to work together in a collective well-being. Each of us has the potential to shine love more powerfully than we can ever understand. And we can shine that love, that light, we can shine it onto our own path. We can also shine it onto all the paths of all the lives around us. We touch so many lives. Number 13, each of us exists because an immeasurable number of factors have come together to make space for us and to form our lives. This is the unity that we are embedded in. Realize that each life, and every creation on earth is uniquely created by this unity and embedded within it. We can deny our unity, but we can't erase it. It creates us and we create it. Love is its connective tissue. This means you're made of love. If you don't see that you're embraced in a love that's beyond human judgment, then you live in the fear that your physical life must conform to a human standard before you can be loved. But love doesn't work like that. Love makes you unique. Love creates you uniquely. Love isn't dependent on you. You are loved, you are included, and you are significant in unity already. This recognition will stand forth on its own when any obstacles in your mind are removed. Number 14, flood your awareness with what love is doing. Where your awareness is void of love, you have no power. Where you use love, your power, the power of your life, is unstoppable. Respond to all others' paths with the power of your love. Pour love into any area empty of love. Power pours love in, and the opposite is to react, which means to try to force something. Flow with power. Don't force. Power transcends anywhere that is void of love. Angst, not transcending, but going in, angst brings reactivity and anxiety, and it stops the flow of true power. Don't depend on that. Don't depend on anything except your love, the power of love. Your love and the love all around you. This is you creating the evolution of your life in heaven and impacting all lives forever. Number 15, each life is created from the blueprint of unity. When someone appears outside of what is expected as good, remember the unity blueprint, the greater context. Love is free from being controlled by anything not of love. Love's power is not dependent on being against anything. Use your love to see each and every life in the blueprint. Even when that life can't see their own love, even when they can't see how they fit into this unity blueprint of collective well-being. See it for them until they do. Hold it for them until they do. Hold their space. Let this mindset control your emotions. Number 16, to the degree that you judge others, you will judge all lives, including your own. This is a one-way street. It's when you judge, you're judging. You can't decide where it's going to go. It's a limited perception that reinforces itself. But when we see ourselves as embedded in unity, in heaven on earth together, we are aware of its essence both around us and within us. This is the heart informing the head. On the other hand, the wormhole out of unity and not really out of unity, but out of being aware of unity and out of really subjectively experiencing unity, is in refusing to trust the natural operating systems of our collective well-being. Don't think that you can judge the operating systems of nature. We humans are not smart enough to understand how everything operates. Do not consider the wormhole out of unity or out of the subjective experience of unity. Don't even consider it. Instead, live in unity's reverence for all of life. In this way, you have access to the resources. Number 17, heaven includes our lives, but it is not limited to them. Form does not manifest heaven, but heaven can manifest form. The unity and well-being of everything is the harmony of heaven. It always exists, and it is felt when one listens to their heart, their instrument. To see all lives as manifestations of heaven, free of judgment, is wisdom. To act from this creates collective well-being on earth. As each of us understands what it means to be love, we see heaven more clearly, including seeing heaven on earth. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel, click on the like button and share the video to help it reach out to more people, and you can drop a comment in the section below if you would like to. Videos on this channel are about love's power, about nature, relationships, and communication skills, and it is free to subscribe. Welcome, and thank you so much for your time.